Welcome to Conflux channel. I am Zachary McCormick.
I'm Matt.
I'm John.
I'm Soren.
Soren's my 10-year-old son.
And tonight we're going to be talking about a school topic. So what better way to have a school topic than actually have a kid that's going to school?
Yeah.
So on this particular instance, me, Zach, Matt, and JJ will talk about our time at school, depending on however it was. And then with Sworn, he's going to talk about how it was when he was going to a public school over him being homeschooled and the differences there. For him, this was what it was like.
Soren went to public school at first, like most kids do, and he has a couple of sensory issues. He's not on the spectrum or anything like his sister is, because she's autistic. But he can't handle the feel of paper against his skin. So trying to read books or trying to do paperwork and just sitting there and having the back of your hand writing on something was very difficult for him. And at the time, not all schoolwork was allowed to be done on tablets or on computers. So we really had to try to figure out what to do to make it easier for him. He also had some other problems with fitting in. He's, like me, mostly Hungarian, so he's a good 1.5 feet taller than all the other kids in his class. And, the bullying happened because of that. And one thing led to another, and eventually the pandemic hit, VidCon 19, and we had to deal with that. So what ended up happening in the end was we decided to homeschool him. And his grades went from B's, C's, and a D all the way up to straight A's or straight B's, depending on the year since then. Soren, when you were in school, tell me what you felt it was like for a normal day. Use your words to describe as best you can.
I really don't know how to say this, but it felt weird.
Okay.
I really don't know what to say right now.
Okay, well, let me help guide you. Do you feel like the other kids treated you fairly?
Well, yes, they do. I made some friends, but there's these two tall kids. The tall kids will always pick on me. And, like one time, I was on a school bus with this guy. He was usually bullying me, but turned into a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
He said, haha, you're a girl, you like pink.
Well, at the time, pink was one of your favorite colors. And nowadays, that's a common thing. It doesn't really matter, what your gender is per se. You can like whatever colors you want. In fact, back for me and JJ, or Lacrosse as we sometimes call him, or Johnny as we sometimes call him, we had a YouTube channel called Inferno Grizz that we used to play. And if you ever watch any of those videos and hear about a guy named Mr. Pink, he's one of our friends that his wardrobe mainly consists of the color pink. So it's all right to like pink. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, since you've been homeschooled, how do you feel about doing your work at home? Do you enjoy it more? Do you enjoy it less? Explain.
I keep both fairly treated going from school to homeschool. I keep them fairly treated.
What do you mean by fairly treated?
I treat them both equally.
But your grades improved massively coming home compared to being at school.
Well, hold on a second. Going back on that, I think I can elaborate a little bit more with what Matt was trying to ask. And that is, do you feel like you're doing a lot much better being homeschooled over the way that you were handling doing schoolwork in a public setting? Like having a teacher that's not your parent making you do the schoolwork in certain circumstances where you felt uncomfortable doing the schoolwork.
Yeah, there were some circumstances, but I really liked my teacher.
That's good. Okay, but you didn't like the paper, right?
Yeah, I did not like the paper.
And it's better for you at home to be able to do the on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we don't have a computer. So.
But also, I really do miss playing on the playground with my friends.
Exactly. That's one downside is the socialization.
Yeah.
That's why, me and my wife has wanted to get him into an after-school activity, but they all cost and we're poor and it's difficult,
Yeah. With me, I'd rather be homeschooled. Honestly, I'm not so much of a social person. To me, I hated being around other people in school.
Mm-hmm.
And like with having ADHD like I have, and just having so much distractions around me 24/7 while at school, I wasn't getting anything done. I was literally like, if I took my homework with me or my schoolwork with me to do as homework, I would be getting straight A's, straight B's.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the environment I was in and being so easily distracted as I was, it hindered my schooling.
Yeah.
It was literally hindering my schooling. And at the time, there wasn't an option like that for me. And me and JJ's mom even tried to have that as an option, and you had to pay to have it as an option.
Yeah.
And I think at the time it was like $500 a month.
Yeah. Back in the day, that's what homeschooling cost, if not more so, depending on where you're at. Homeschooling for my son right now is actually just automatically offered for 3 through the district. You just have to ask them, hey, can he be put on VLA, which is Virtual Learning Academy? And they automatically do it. The only thing he has to do is 4 times between September and May, go into the school, take a test, like a reading literacy test, okay, or an English literacy test, and that's it. Otherwise, he's completely homeschooled. And here's the kicker. This is the wild part. I know that it will become more work the older he gets, but the past 3 years he's been in VLA, and this year he's in 4th grade, okay? The past 3 years, this is all he has to do. Once a week, one day, roughly 2 hours of work.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all. And they said that you can take that 2 hours of work, which is anywhere from 10 to 40 questions per each of his 4 topics, social studies, science, math, and English, and spread those out, do one day, 2 one day, whatever. Me and him will just sit there and knock it out in 2 hours. We'll take him, he'll have a 15-minute break in between 2 of the subjects, and that's it. We don't have to worry about it.
My nephew, who was Mr. Pink, actually he took a year off of school and did homeschooling for a year. And he was saying similar things back when he did it.
What was his experience?
He had a good time with it. He literally just wanted to take I'm not going to go into details.
Okay,
but
that's okay.
He just needed that year off, basically.
Yeah.
And he still did his work.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So in some cases, like homeschooling is a major help, but in some other cases, like going to an actual public school and having like the teachers be there to help guide you on certain things can also be help in certain cases as well, if you don't truly understand the material that you're working on. But I think if you understand it, or like if your parents understand it and can help give you an explanation on how to properly do the work, I think whatever best fits that student should be proper for them.
Should be available to them.
Yeah.
Like, for example, with me, I was public schooled the whole time, okay? I had an IEP, and for those of you that don't know, can't remember what the term actually stands for, but long story short, it's for students that have some kind of learning disability or dysfunction, or sometimes students that have an aggression issue, or just have issues in general that makes their ability to learn or capability to come to school and deal with things less than the other students. I had an IEP because of math, because when it comes to anything higher than addition, subtraction, and basic multiplication, I can't do it. Even the higher multiplications I have trouble with, except the nines, because if anybody remembers this trick, you can do the nines on your fingers, okay, for multiplication. Now, I can do geometry because I'm an artist and I understand angles really well, but beyond that, I needed a lot of help. And my parents couldn't help me with that. My mom was a number cruncher for a place called Quest Diagnostics for a long time, but she was always working and always busy. She couldn't homeschool me. My dad, he worked the steel mill, and he barely made it through high school, so he did what he could. So students will have to do what they can. So in closing on that part, not for the whole video, but just for what I was saying, I felt like going to school and having the teachers in the learning disability classes really helped me along in what I needed. I was until 11th grade 2.5 feet taller roughly than everybody else. I was nearly 6 foot tall when I was 9 years old, and just I felt alienated a lot. So having people there to help me, the small circle of nerdy friends that I had and outcasts that we were, that helped out a lot. So the socialization helped out. And for those of you that may be wondering what's going to happen with Soren in the future, is he just going to be homeschooled his whole life? Well, we're going to get through middle school and then we'll see. We'll go from there. If he can think he can handle high school, we'll try high school, because I don't want to take away that full experience from him, but at the same time, I remember in some instances, I honestly felt like high school was hell, but at other times it was the break or getaway that I needed. So it can be a blessing or a curse.
So you're basically going to leave the schooling up to his choice. He wants to continue homeschooling.
When we get to 8th grade, we're going to see how the workload is. And if it gets to the point where I cannot successfully teach him anymore, because Jamie doesn't do it, I'm the one that handles it. And she said that Jamie is my wife for reference. But if we get to higher math that I simply can't teach him, like we're starting to get into algebra already, and I'm having trouble teaching him, she said she'll handle the math part of it, and I just do everything else. So if we get into 8th grade and we're struggling, then we're going to entertain 9th grade, you got to get up early in the morning, you got to catch the bus because we don't have a car, you got to go, and we're just going to go from there.
But in certain circumstances, in a way, with what you said, 2 hours, a week or 2 hours a day?
2 hours a week.
That's 2 hours a week. If you can get, let's say, 2 hours a week, 2 hours per day instead, you would finish your classes a lot sooner.
Oh, and that's the catch. Okay, so this year, the teachers asked us to drag it out more, okay, to do 1 unit a week. 1 unit a week is one set of questions on social studies, one set on math, one set on science, one set on English. Usually there's some reading involved for English. For science, there's an at-home project you can do if you like. For math, it's just watching a video or two and then trying it out. And then for social studies, it's usually a pretty in-depth reading about whatever's going on in history. Like this year, we're learning about Ohio's history where we live. We live in Ohio, so there you go. But anyways, last year, we got all of his schoolwork done for the year by February. Okay?
And that's not bad.
And that's not bad at all. They said we could do it. His cousin, right now, who's only a couple years older than him, okay, his cousin is literally going to be done with all of his schoolwork for the year next week. And he's homeschooled as well. And now, they just asked us if we could drag it out more, because what they found out is when he went to go do his testing in March and May, okay, or maybe it was February and May, but you get the idea, because like I said, 4 times they go. He had forgotten a lot of what he had learned. So if we drag it out and do 1 a week, it'll be more fresh in his mind for when he goes to do the testing.
Well, what if they speed up the testing, let him take the test when he feels like
it's state issue testing.
The
state does it. It's not they have a test sitting there waiting for him. It's a state representative comes to the school at a scheduled time, stays there for like 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks you have to come in and get your test done.
Okay.
I wish,
But wouldn't it be a little bit more better? And this is just in retrospect. Um, wouldn't it be a little bit better if his um, schoolwork would match up to what he's accomplishing at the moment? Match up with his speed on what he can do.
I completely agree with you. It's just we can't control the state testing. In fact, his teacher agrees with us and wishes she could just give him his test when he meets it. So, for example, what she would have done last year is she would have called him into the school during the time that he met that milestone in his learning, completed that section of work. Like, for instance, there's 144 units altogether. And the way the teacher wants to do it is every 33 to 40 units, when they're ready for that test, have the student come in. But she can't get the state to authorize her giving the tests. The state representative has to give the test.
Because, at least my experience going to school, we had a test after every chapter of work we did.
Exactly, and in this way, we don't get tests after every chapter. What it is you read the unit and you answer anywhere between, like I said, about 10 to 40 questions. English and math are usually on the higher end. Science and social studies usually on the lower end for how many answers or for how many questions you have to answer. And there is one mid-semester test, which is about 50 to 100 questions that covers everything, and it happens for each unit. And then your final exam, which is 50 to 100 questions on everything that came after. And that's it. He doesn't get a bunch of different tests that he goes and does.
Wow.
Yep. That's just how it works. And it's working well for him. Right now, the way they grade is 90 to 100 is an A. 80 to 89 is a B, and so on and so forth. He's sitting between 82 and 87% in all of his classes, and that's straight B's. And last year was straight A's. But the difference is he's got the same amount of units, but almost double the workload that he had last year because it's a new grade, and they're trying to levy more stuff on him. Like for English, they're wanting him to write 3 and 4 paragraph answers for some of the things they're having him review, where last year it was 1 paragraph. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
And it seems like when we were going to school, I can't talk about your schooling, but with me, it was if I could do the stuff at home, I could just kick out the test like right after each chapter, like right as soon as I was ready for it. Mm-hmm. And if that was the case, I would have already been in a situation where I could have finished school by the time it would normally take me to go to middle school.
Gotcha.
About, since we're talking about everybody's experience, I know my own. There's times when I do better, having ADHD myself, as well as Zach, and I think you, Matt, as well have it too, don't you?
I used to have the hyperactive one, but I grew out of it.
Yeah.
So
I still have it to a point, and there's times, it's weird, there's times where I focus better in a structured environment where there's stuff around me, and there's times where I need complete isolation. It's like my brain functions good one way one day, and then the next day it's different.
That's the way it was with me in certain topics.
Yeah.
Like math, I could excel at. Science, I could excel at. And I actually liked being around other people for those type of projects. But like social studies, I hated. And I hated being around other people because it was harder for me to focus.
What I would do in social studies is I would literally sit there and just read the book in my own time because I like to read about history. And then I would have a lot of that memorized throughout the thing. Mm-hmm. But
for me, I really enjoyed science.
Science was fun.
Science and English because I was big into reading at the time. What about you, Soren?
I really liked social studies and science because they're easy to do, easy on my brain, and wouldn't give me any headaches. And they were very short.
Not a lot of answers, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so English, back in college, I used to do something that was called prepared and extemporaneous speeches. To be clear, prepared and extemporaneous speech means the following. A prepared speech is kind of what it sounds like. You have time, anywhere between 15 minutes to a day to write up your speech so that you can go ahead and give it, practice it in the mirror, whatever you need. Extemporaneous speech was really fun but very difficult because you got your topic 5 minutes before you had to give your speech, and you weren't allowed to write anything down. So extemporaneous is on the spot all of a sudden. And that's something we even did for Skills USA, which was kind of like Leaders of Tomorrow, if you know what that is. If not, check it out on Google, where we would go into competitions, and I would do extemporaneous speech or prepared speech, or I gave, physics on the physics of a hurricane. That was fun stuff to do in high school.
And with me, something similar. I took public speaking, and we weren't supposed to do impromptu speeches, but a lot of times the way my brain worked, I was actually better that way. So public speaking class, it was easier for me to do impromptu speeches. Don't get me wrong, I would read up on the stuff, but I wouldn't prepare an outline because just thinking off the fly was something I was able to do.
So extemporaneous is kind of like what I did, but
Yeah.
You had a little bit of time to prepare for the topic.
Yeah. And
basically, you did do the work. You just didn't put down little notes for yourself.
Yeah, and I would just make up what I was saying on the spot. And I was good enough to the point where it took the teacher half a semester to realize I was doing that. Eventually, I had to show her the outline ahead of time. Or, there was a couple times where I would still do it and then write it out real quick.
See, that reminds me of something that happened during my college English speaking class. They asked us to prepare this big PowerPoint slide thing, and you had like a 12-minute speech you had to give. And mine, I decided, was going to be on Dungeons and Dragons. I printed out character sheets for the entire class, got a D20 for each person in the class, passed them out beforehand. There was a couple of groans because a couple people were like, oh, D&D, whatever. So I went up and I gave my speech. Now, I had my speech planned out. Okay, you were supposed to give good and negative points, and you were supposed to tell your personal experience and how you thought it would help the people in the class. I went through the whole thing, showing slide after slide after slide, okay? And then the teacher graded it, gave me an A+, and gave me an extra 10% because the class...
You got the class involved.
Yeah, the class was involved. They enjoyed it. And then I go to sit down, and somebody points out, wait a minute, he didn't say anything negative. And somebody goes, oh, you didn't plan anything negative, did you? And I go, no, go back to the slide. And I go to the 8th slide, and I had accidentally talked about something positive during it. The 8th slide was mentioning Mazes and Monsters starring Tom Hanks. It was based on the real-life thing where that kid lost himself in the game and completely lost his personality and became his character in real life and never recovered from it.
And in a way, that's a negative.
And that's a negative. And I was also going to cover the satanic panic that was involved around D&D, and I completely forgot to talk about that. You know what the teacher said? Well, you succeeded your persuasion attempt. Guess what? Diplomacy check succeeded. You still keep your A+. Yes.
And here's the thing with that. Sorry to go off topic a little bit, but that can be any sort of creative outlet. People can get too into it.
Yep.
Because there's people that lose their... Now, don't be wrong, LARPing's awesome, but there's people that can lose their lives to that, and they become the character.
Exactly.
That could be that could be a lot of things.
Yes, but getting back onto it, talking about school still.
Yep, sorry to get off topic.
That's okay. All right. Go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say, in a way, if we could have certain games in school that were like D&D or... Because what most people don't know is there's a lot of math that goes on with D&D.
Oh, yes.
And that's actually a really good way to trick someone into doing math if they like D&D.
Yep.
Or get something in particular one thing my mom did with me when she was teaching me how to do checks at the age of 5, around maybe 5 or 6, is like play banking. She would do that with her old checkbooks and write void on the back of them.
Yeah.
But she would tell me like, hey, I need a check for like $400. This is how you write it. Now you write it.
That's a good idea.
That was a way that I learned to do checks.
Another way to help figure out math, even though it's a little more basic when it comes to the math, will depend on how far you get into the game, and something that over the past couple years I've been off and on trying with Soren here for him to learn, Magic the Gathering. There's a good bit of math involved. And here's the thing about games in school. Games in school in general, I'm going to give you a personal story here and an opinion. My opinion is games like Magic and D&D and video games can help you learn better in school. And this is why. My mom was very concerned about Dungeons and Dragons because of the initial satanic panic back in the 80s and 90s, where people thought, oh, using Dungeons and Dragons to worship the devil and blah, 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 and things like that. What ended up happening is my mom, God rest her soul, she went ahead and talked to one of my friends about D&D who knew a lot about it. And she said, can you describe to me D&D? He goes, yes, I can. It is a social activity that deals with basic to higher level math, problem solving, using your imagination, and being as creative as you generally would like to be while allowing you to work through your own personal problems. And with those words, I was suddenly allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons. What do you know?
And in a way, like, that would be a good thing to have in school to help with classes in senses like reading, math,
problem solving,
maybe a little bit of science involved for the wizard types.
Exactly, using your imagination.
Now, what do you think about that, Soren?
What do you think about it, buddy? Being a 10-year-old, what do you think? If somebody said, hey, you get to do D&D and it's part of your schoolwork, how would you feel about that?
Pretty feeling good. Awesome.
Now, for the record, Soren here has played D&D twice so far in his life, and he had a lot of trouble trying to understand the difference between keeping what you know separate from what your character knows. But he's working on it, and that's the kind of skills you need to work on, and something that would be really important to help with schools. Because when you're in school, you need to keep separate the knowledge that you know versus the knowledge that you're taught. There was a kid in my class that would read, back in, I think, 8th grade, he would read books from higher level because his brother was 2 grades ahead of him. He'd read those books, know the knowledge, memorize it, because he had what do they call it?
Photographic memory?
Yeah, photographic memory, even though people claim that doesn't exist. It freaking does. Exactly, it does. He had a photographic memory, and he would recite things for the test, and the teacher goes, we haven't learned that yet. And he goes, but I read the book. She goes, well, you must be cheating. But I read the book. And I mean, come on.
Well, that's the thing with me, too. I have a type of photographic memory that's called overlay shared visual memory.
Okay.
That's where I can, let's say they give you a little cheat sheet before your test, and it's actually like maybe the day before or a week before your test. I can hold the paper like out at arm's length, look at the paper, just the paper, not even read it. Put the paper away. By the time it comes for me to take that test, I have all the answers right in front of me.
Okay.
That's overlaid visual memory.
Okay.
And it's not perfect, but that's generally what it is. I've seen them do it before.
You see, I have memory issues personally. I start to not remember a lot of stuff from math and English and a lot of other stuff about school. I really have, you see, whenever I remember something goes into my mind, I try and store it there, but I slowly get focused on other stuff that fades away into nothingness and I don't remember it.
Well, something that we've been working on with Soren, and I knew students used to have issues with it, I was one of them, is you remember what you care about. For example, if I sat here and asked Soren to recite things about Minecraft or Godzilla or certain YouTubers, he could recite them, no problem at all. But if I asked him what he learned in math last week, he would have a hard issue with it because it's about what you care about. Now, that doesn't make Soren any less of a student or his abilities any less. It's just he's not sitting there focusing on math all the time. He's focusing on what he likes, what he cares about. And my therapist back when I was younger taught me about that. And he said, if you tried to care about your schoolwork the way you cared about Godzilla and video games, because that's what I was into when I was younger, you would end up doing better at school. And I actually tried to care more about my schoolwork, and my grades improved.
Well, there's actually a name for it. I believe it's selective memory retention.
I don't know.
I remember looking it up, but I'll look it up a little bit more after this video and make sure if I'm right. If I'm not right, I will make a note of it either in the description or somewhere on the video. But do you want to add anything else?
I wanted to talk about something from video games where we're not going to talk about video games.
Well, we'll talk about video games.
We'll talk about that in another discussion.
Yeah, we're just talking about school in this discussion.
Well, remember that part when I told you all, you guys, where my bully became a friend of mine?
Yeah.
There was my friend who was a bully. I miss him, my friend, but I get to see him sometimes when I do testing at my school.
So though you miss him, you do get to see him every now and then when you go back to school, okay?
Yes.
All right. So what you're trying to say is you would like that socialization, but you still like to learn from home.
Yes.
So if you could socialize more, if me and Mommy could afford for you to go to the school, maybe be a part of the after school activity, you'd like that, right?
Yes, I would really like that.
And I'd like to be able to do it too, but again, we're very poor, unfortunately.
With me, I think it would be a good idea if there were funding to be able to do those type of things to help fund for after school activities for the families that don't have the ability to afford it.
Kind of how they have funding for kids who can't afford lunches, have funding for kids who, and that's the problem. We're not going to get into politics here, but that is the problem with the education system is if it's not sports, they don't support it. So.
Yeah. Well, even in some sports, they don't support through funding.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain after-school activities I wanted to do growing up that I couldn't do. I wasn't big in sports, but I liked wrestling. So I wanted to get into an after-school wrestling program. That didn't work out because my mom couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead...
But yeah, so for me in closing, I feel that, like Zach was saying, to reiterate from him, that if it fits the student, they should be able and be properly funded to do what they need to do, whether it be an after-school activity, studying at home, or studying publicly. I preferred public with after-school activities. I know there's plenty of people that feel differently than that. What do you prefer, lacrosse?
I mean, I was in Boy Scouts myself, so.
Mm-hmm. Same here. Mm-hmm. I was in the Young Marines too, even though I wasn't a fan of that. That was still something I did after school karate. That was fun. Chess club, D&D.
Yeah, I learned a lot from Scouts. I even
Scouts.
worked at camp for a long time. So
with me not being able to have a regular after school activity, I made my own wrestling group and did YouTube. Well, their highlights are on YouTube now as music videos. And that was how I watched WA. And that was something I started when I was around 5, turning to 6. And that was something that I was doing after school for years. But that was my after school activity. That was something I got to do after school.
Yeah.
But if there was something like that for a regular after school activity, I would be fond of it. Like school wrestling. I wanted to do that, but unfortunately, my mom just didn't have the money to let me do it.
Yeah.
And I think if there was more of a funding program for after school courses or after school activities, a lot more people would be getting more along the lines of wanting to be around school a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, with that being the closing situation topic, all I want to say at the moment is if anything in this video helped you at all with maybe if you're a parent listening to this video with your child, but and it was helpful to you about like private school over public school or homeschooling, leave a like on the video if that's something that was helpful. If it's not, then, dislike the video or say why in the comments. It doesn't matter.
Or even, for instance, if you guys want us to talk more about this, or if you have any questions about our feelings on any of these discussions.
Exactly. Leave a comment down below in the little box. If this was very helpful to you and you learned something about this, if you're a student or if you're a parent of a student, which is probably like a general proportion of you people, then go ahead, leave it a like. If you want to hear more about the topic or more discussion of topics like this in future episodes, go ahead, let us know in the comments down below.
And if you have any questions for Soren here, whether they be school, video game, comic related, or so on and so forth, he will be in future videos and he'd be more than happy to answer them, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would. I would really love to.
And please keep them clean.
Yes. Positive, constructive criticism questions. We appreciate it. And have a great day.
Yeah.
Please keep that comment field clean. Thank you.